So today I'm talking about the kinship of all life. I had food poisoning over the weekend, and it was very difficult for me to consider that part of my being as kinship with God. So what I do know, however, is that no matter what physical stuff is showing up in my life, in my body, that it is a way of my body trying to reach a balance. So being ill from something that I ingested was just a way of my body trying to come to balance. And I can forgive myself and forgive those little viruses and parasites and bacteria, whatever that was, and know that somehow or other there's a benefit there, and it's not for me to understand necessarily. Ernest Holmes, our philosophy guru, the man who wrote the Science of Mind book that is our textbook, said we believe in healing through the power of mind. And so that's what I really want to talk about today, is that the mind has the power to heal in the universal subjective mind or divine mind, which creates this entire universe through the activity of thought. So the whole universe is created by the thought, which was initiated and is initiated by the divine creative source that we call God. The divine mind creates this entire manifest universe. Given that we human beings think, and we are thinking in this universal mind, our thought is also contributing to that which is created as our personal experience in this manifest universe. In other words, what we think is what we get. We are creating all the time, every thought that we have. Science of Mind teaches that all things in our world are actually caused by the beliefs held in our unconscious minds. By changing what we believe, we can have the experience of changing the things or conditions in our world. Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your world. We believe absolutely in the power of this mind and our ability to use it for improving our experience in our lives. We call that practice of this principle healing. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind book says that we are living in an intelligent universe which responds to our mental states. To the extent that we learn to control these mental states, we shall automatically control our environment. This is why we are studying the power of thought as we approach the subject of spiritual mind healing. Know your own mind. Train yourself to think what you wish to think. Be what you wish to be. Feel what you wish to feel, and place no limit on principle. Place no limit on principle. Never limit your view of life by any past experience. Possibility of life is inherent within the capacity to imagine what life is, backed by the power to produce this imagery or divine intelligence. Place no limit on principle. Never ever say anything is impossible. And know for yourself that what you think is what you get. Not what society thinks. Not what society limits for you. To have faith in the power of the principle that thoughts are creative. And we face so many obstacles by society limiting us and limiting what we can and cannot believe in, what we can and cannot know. I want to remind you of the extended period of time that all of culture and all of society thought the world was flat. And some even persist in that, despite what I consider overwhelming evidence that the world is round. Some people still believe the world is flat, that the circular world is a conspiracy. Don't trust what other people think, what other people say, what other people limit you with. Trust only in the principle that what you think is what you get, and you can always change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, you change your life. So I want to share with you a story that, not a story, a truth, a fact, of a minister, a religious science minister named Dory Patelin, who was born in 1945 to his mother, Hildegard. And Hildegard was more than mature when she gave birth to Dory. And Hildegard was in labor for 32 hours because this was in 1945, and that's what folks did. When he was finally born, he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck several times. And he was, according to the doctors, profoundly challenged with cerebral palsy. And his parents, Ted and Hildegard, were encouraged to institutionalize him because he would be nothing more than a vegetable, they said. His eyes were compromised by some sort of damage, and his eyes, you could only see the whites of his eyes. He was essentially blind. Ultimately, he learned how to move so that one eye could focus and the other would be out of focus. Hildegard was not one to believe that the doctors were correct. She took Dory all over the country, outside the country, looking for a cure for his cerebral palsy. And the doctors said, no, there's no hope for that. There's no chance for that. He learned to talk at 18 months. He was very, very bright, but hopelessly affected by cerebral palsy. No hope. Just institutionalize him, the doctor said. Do not put yourself through this misery, this pain, and yet Hildegard would not hear of it. Someone serendipitously told her about a minister, Ernest Holmes, and encouraged her to go hear him speak, which she did. And Ernest Holmes told her that for Dory to be healed, she must first learn to see him as a perfect creature of a perfect God and not as a poor, crippled child. Let me just read you what Ernest had to say about that. She went and spoke with him after the lecture, and he said, Ernest Holmes told my mother that I could be healed, but that she must first learn to see me as a perfect creation of a perfect God and not as a poor, crippled child. She must create a mental picture of me as whole, perfect, and complete. She must feel the emotions she would feel when I ran into her arms, strong and healthy. She must create my new reality in her mind for me, and then mentally take occupancy of it. She must live from the end result. She must live from the end result, knowing and feeling what it's going to feel like when Dory is walking. And so she began to pray in the way that we pray, knowing from that place of intention that this son of hers, who was brilliant, could also walk. And you know the result. Within a very short period of time, he began to move. He began to walk. And now he says, while he's not graceful, these many years later, he certainly is not inhibited by cerebral palsy. He's been cured. He calls himself Hildegard's miracle. His vision was not as immediately improved. So several years ago, he went to see a Baptist healer who prayed over him. And now his vision is almost normal. He said that the Baptist minister's method was not in the same alignment with Ernest Holmes, but the point was in the faith, not in the method. And I think that that's what we all need to remember, that the point is in the faith, not necessarily in the method. Knowing that your word has power, that you are in kinship with all of the universe, all of God, and therefore you are powerful. You're powerful beyond measure. We need to place no limits on principle. Your thoughts are creative. So, when we talk about not limiting principle, I want to tell you another story about Charlotte Heffelmeyer, who is from Vienna, Virginia. She's 5'6" and weighs 120 pounds. And last November, she was drawn to her family garage. She felt like something was wrong. And she opened her garage door to find that the car, her dad's truck, was on fire. Her dad was pinned under the truck. One wheel he had jacked it up, removed a wheel, and was doing something under the car. The jack slipped, and the dad was pinned under the burning truck. There's some controversy about actually how much the truck weighed. Some reports were 3 tons, some reports were 7 tons. But I think we can all agree that a 120-pound young woman, who was 19 at the time, was hardly a challenge for a 3 or 7 ton truck. But from somewhere came the power to lift that truck off of her dad. She had to try twice. She said she couldn't even know where that power, that strength came from. But she lifted this truck off of her father, pulled him to safety, went back inside the garage, started the truck that was on fire, and moved it out of the garage away from the home. She called 911, went inside to get her family out. She was a West Point student, had to miss the next semester because her feet and her legs were so severely burned. Is she an exception? I don't think so. think we all have that magnificent power of the Spirit, of the divine, to take action when our intention is very clear. She didn't take the time to worry about, am I strong enough to do this? No. Her intention was very clear. Lift the truck, get the dad out, move the truck, move everybody out of the house. Do we all have that same kind of power? Yes, we do. If our intention is very clear. We have the ability, like Hildegard, to heal through the power of our mind, the focus of our imagination, knowing divine right action, must respond to our intention, our thoughts. Since the mind is what we use, it is the divine mind, it is the God's mind, and we're using it every time we think. Our thinking has the power to heal or to change the conditions of the world. So our task is to always come to the place of wondering, what are we thinking? I joke about that a lot. What could I be thinking? But that's the truth. What are you thinking? What are you creating? Are you allowing the universal mind to work for you? Or are you using the mass consciousness that allows you to say, no, can't do that. That's never happened. That's impossible. How many impossibilities are we living with now? We've got men walking on the moon. Oh, that's impossible. We have little phones that when Dick Tracy started talking through his phone, we said, oh, that'd be cool, but that's impossible. How many things are we living with, enjoying now, that at some point in time, people said, that's impossible. The truth of the matter is, nothing is impossible. Remember when Einstein said that nothing moved faster than the speed of light? Now we know that that's not the case. So, the question is, what are you going to do with that power? What are you thinking now? What part of your life do you want to change? Do you want to recreate? There's no limit to it. You have the same power, the same ability as Hildegard, as the young woman who holds up trucks. The difference may only be in your intention. What are you intending for yourself? So I leave you with that question. And I leave you with the knowing Not the belief, not the faith, not the trust, but the knowing that what you think is what you get. That you have the power, that awesome power, to change your life in any way you choose. And if your life is good, which I hope it is, to just know that it can get better and better. You're not limited, ever, except by your imagination and by your deep commitment to an intention. So, namaste. I love you all. I'm going to invite the practitioners to join with me as we stand and hold this community in love and light. So I invite you, if it feels comfortable for you, to move within. To feel on the deepest level the knowing that there is one power, one presence, one divine essence that is creative, and it is yours to use. You are not all of that I call God, but all that you are is God. And you have your portion of the divine power to use creatively, lovingly. I know that God knows no limits. There is nothing impossible in the mind of God. And so at this moment, I open myself to know that there is nothing impossible in my own world. I allow myself to fully trust that knowing and not to be dissuaded by what I call the mass consciousness, the doomsayers, those that say, oh, that's impossible. No reasonable person would expect that to ever happen. So I'm confessing to be unreasonable. To stand in the truth that all is possible, that my life is open beyond limits, that good and more good, vitality and more vitality, energy and more energy, dynamic good health and wellness is mine right this moment. I take the lid off and I allow life to just percolate with such enthusiasm and such joy, vitality, miracles flooding into my life from every direction. That's the norm. The exciting part is watching it unfold. Watching how the whole universe puts it together. And I joyfully, exuberantly celebrate that. The weaving together of exciting, miraculous, dynamic, glorious life, events, opportunities, situations, healings. there are naysayers in my life, I embrace them. And I use that same power, that same loving energy to call them to open possibilities. To share the knowing of the divine by example. So I call forth at this moment good and more good to rain down on each person present, each person that I hold in my consciousness, each person that may or may not have impact on my life. I celebrate good and only good. And I claim it for each one of us. And I invite you to claim it and own it for yourself, for our community, for our world, for our universe. By joining me emphatically and enthusiastically as I say, and
so it is.